The call came at 9:42 in the morning, while I was making breakfast. The kids, Sophie and Max, were upstairs getting ready for school. My husband, Tyler, was in our bedroom, getting dressed for work. The trustee's voice was professional but tight, like he was reading from a script he wished didn't exist. "Mrs. Carter, I'm calling to inform you of a significant change to the Carter Children's Trust. A new beneficiary was added last night through an emergency amendment process. The beneficiary's name is Vanessa Monroe. She's been allocated a 40% distribution share." I set down the spatula carefully. 40% of $40 million? Yes, ma'am. $16 million. My brain went cold in calculating. The trust had been set up by Tyler's late father specifically for Sophie and Max. Both Tyler and I were co-trustees, which meant both of us had to approve any changes. I had approved nothing. Who authorized this? I asked, though I already knew. Your husband submitted the paperwork yesterday afternoon. His signature is on file. We're required to notify you within 24 hours of any amendments. And my signature? There was a pause. According to our records, you provided verbal authorization via phone call yesterday at 2:15 p.m. I had been at my daughter's piano recital at 2:15 p.m. 40 people could confirm it. That night at dinner, Tyler was perfect. He asked Sophie about her recital, praised her performance even though he hadn't been there. He helped Max with his math homework, patient and encouraging. He complimented the roast chicken I'd made, poured me wine, asked about my day. I watched him like I was seeing a stranger. His smile was easy, his laugh genuine. He kissed my forehead when he cleared the dishes. This was the man I'd built a life with. The man who apparently thought he could steal from our children and I'd never notice. "Are you okay?" he asked, catching me staring. "Just tired," I said, smiling back. He squeezed my shoulder. "Why don't you go relax? I'll handle bedtime tonight." I went upstairs and closed our bedroom door. Then I pulled out my laptop and opened the Trust's online portal. I'd set up all the digital access years ago, managed all the passwords, created all the security protocols. Tyler had never bothered learning the system. He'd always said I was better at the details. The amendment log loaded. The change wasn't rushed. It had been drafted 3 weeks ago, revised twice, and finalized yesterday. Someone had helped him. Someone who knew trust law. Why hadn't he even tried to hide it better? I didn't sleep that night. While Tyler snored beside me, I went through every document in the trust portal. The amendment wasn't just careless. It was strategic. Vanessa Monroe had been positioned as a family friend providing essential care services during a period of family hardship. What family hardship? We were fine. The kids were healthy, our marriage appeared solid, Tyler's business was thriving. But the language created a legal justification, a paper trail that made the distribution look legitimate. I pulled the trust's original documents, the ones Tyler's father had created 15 years ago. Section 12 outlined amendment procedures. Both trustees had to sign in the presence of a notary. Verbal authorization wasn't mentioned anywhere. Either Tyler had lied to the trustee or the trustee had lied to me. I checked the digital signature timestamp. 2:17 p.m. 2 minutes after I'd supposedly given verbal authorization. I opened my phone's location history. At 2:17 p.m. yesterday, I'd been at Riverside Academy, sitting in the 4th row of the auditorium. I took screenshots of everything. Then I Googled Vanessa Monroe. The search results loaded and my stomach dropped. She wasn't some random woman. She was very deliberately chosen. How long has this been going on? Vanessa Monroe was 31 years old, a marketing consultant who'd worked on 3 of Tyler's business ventures over the past 18 months. Her LinkedIn showed a professional headshot, confident smile, degrees from good schools. Her Instagram was public. I scrolled through her photos. There she was at a restaurant I recognized. One Tyler had told me was a client dinner. There she was at a conference in Miami that Tyler had attended alone. There she was wearing a necklace I'd never seen before, expensive, distinctive, the kind of thing Tyler used to buy me. The most recent photo was from 2 weeks ago. She was standing on a yacht, sunset behind her, champagne glass raised. The caption read, "Celebrating New Beginnings." I zoomed in on the background. I could see part of a name on the yacht's hull. Carter V. Carter V was Tyler's boat. The one he kept docked in Charleston. The one he'd bought last year as a business investment. I sat back, my hands trembling. This wasn't just an affair. This was an integration. He'd woven her into his business, his social life, his assets. And now he was trying to weave her into our children's inheritance. Someone had helped him draft that amendment. Someone who knew trust law and thought they'd found a loophole. They were wrong. I pulled the original trust document again and read every single word. Tyler's father had been a careful man, a lawyer himself, and he'd built protections into the structure. Section 18 outlined fiduciary responsibility. Any trustee who acted against the trust's original intent, who prioritized personal benefit over beneficiary welfare, could be removed and held financially liable. Section 23 was even better. It required full disclosure of any conflicts of interest. If a trustee was in a personal relationship with a proposed beneficiary, that relationship had to be documented and approved by an independent legal review board. Tyler had disclosed nothing. He'd hidden the relationship, falsified my authorization, and tried to push the amendment through before anyone noticed the problems. But someone had noticed. The trustee had called me. The question was whether he'd called because he was following procedure, or because he'd spotted something wrong. I needed to know if the trustee had already flagged this internally. I needed to know if Tyler realized he'd made a mistake. And I needed to know who'd helped him draft the amendment because they'd made mistakes too. I opened my email and wrote a careful message to the trustee, asking for a full copy of the amendment paperwork and all supporting documents. Did the trustee notice this already? The next morning, Sophie mentioned something at breakfast that made my blood freeze. Dad's friend was really nice, she said, pouring milk on her cereal. I looked up sharply. What friend? The lady from his company party last month. She showed me and Max the dessert table and let us pick whatever we wanted. Tyler's company party. The annual event I'd skipped because I'd had the flu. Tyler had taken the kids, said it would be good for them to see where he worked. What was her name? I asked carefully. Sophie shrugged. I don't remember. She was pretty though. She had red hair. Vanessa Monroe had red hair. I'd seen it in her photos. Tyler had introduced our children to his mistress. He'd brought her into their world, normalized her presence, started building a relationship between them. My hands clenched under the table. Max was only 7 years old. Sophie was 10. They were babies. And Tyler was already preparing them for a future where this woman was part of their lives. Did Dad introduce her as his friend? I asked, keeping my voice light. Yeah, Sophie said. He said she helps him with work stuff. Tyler walked into the kitchen then, coffee mug in hand, completely oblivious to what his daughter had just revealed. The kids were already being exposed. I spent the next 3 days reconstructing everything. I went through our bank statements, credit card records, business filings, tax returns. I created a spreadsheet tracking every unusual expense, every unexplained transfer, every pattern that didn't fit our normal life. What I found was worse than I'd imagined. The trust amendment wasn't the first boundary Tyler had crossed. It was just the most ambitious one. Over the past 2 years, Tyler had created 3 shell LLCs. Small amounts of money flowed through them, $20,000 here, $30,000 there, always just under the reporting threshold that would trigger automatic reviews. The LLCs had vague names like Strategic Consulting Partners and Horizon Advisory Group. I cross-referenced the LLC addresses with Vanessa's business registration. 2 of them listed the same office building where she rented space. Tyler had been funneling money to her for almost 2 years. Not trust money, not yet, but our marital assets. Our savings. Money that was supposed to be for our family, our future, our children's education. I calculated the total. Approximately $470,000 had been moved through these LLCs. Some of it had gone to Vanessa directly. Some had been used to fund joint ventures between them. How much money has been siphoned? I needed legal advice, but I couldn't go to our regular family attorney. He played golf with Tyler. So I contacted Pierce & Hamilton, a firm that specialized in high-net-worth divorce and trust litigation. I asked for their best attorney. I met Claudia Pierce in her downtown office. She was in her 50s, sharp-eyed, with a reputation for destroying unfaithful spouses in court. I gave her the basic facts without revealing everything. I wanted to see how Tyler's actions would be judged without my emotional context. She listened, took notes, and when I finished, she sat back in her leather chair. Mrs. Carter, I'm going to be direct. If what you're describing is accurate, your husband hasn't just committed marital infidelity. He's committed fiduciary fraud. The trust amendment alone could result in criminal charges. The forged authorization is felony fraud. The undisclosed conflict of interest violates state trust law. What are we talking about in terms of consequences? I asked. For him, complete removal as trustee, potential criminal prosecution, civil liability for any funds already distributed, automatic grounds for divorce with cause, which affects asset division, and professional consequences. If his business involves any kind of licensing or bonding, this could destroy his reputation. She leaned forward. This could destroy him. But you need to understand, once you start this process, there's no going back. It will be public, messy, and brutal. I thought about Sophie and Max, about protecting them. But then I thought about Tyler bringing Vanessa to meet them, about him stealing their future to fund his affair. I understand, I said. Let's proceed. This could destroy him. Our anniversary fell 3 days later. 14 years of marriage. Tyler had made dinner reservations at the restaurant where he'd proposed. He bought me flowers, expensive ones, the kind he used to buy when we were young, and everything felt possible. At dinner he gave a speech. He held my hand across the table and talked about loyalty, about partnership, about building a life together. He thanked me for being his rock, his foundation. He said I was the best mother our children could have. I smiled. I laughed at his jokes. I let him order champagne. And the entire time I was recording everything in my mind, every lie, every false promise, every word that contradicted what he'd done. Our waiter brought dessert, a chocolate torte we'd shared on our first anniversary. Tyler fed me a bite, romantic and sweet. Other diners smiled at us, this loving couple celebrating their marriage. I wondered if Vanessa knew where he was tonight. I wondered if she cared that he was playing devoted husband, while planning to give her $16 million. When we got home, Tyler kissed me goodnight and fell asleep immediately. I went downstairs and emailed Claudia Pierce, confirming I wanted to move forward with everything. He was lying publicly now, and I had witnesses. 2 days later, Vanessa made a critical mistake. She posted a photo on Instagram from a resort in Turks and Caicos. The photo showed her on a private beach, luxury villa visible in the background. The caption read, "Sometimes the best investments pay off in unexpected ways." I recognized that resort immediately. Tyler had bought a fractional ownership in it 6 months ago, told me it was a business investment that would generate rental income. He'd used money from one of his LLCs to purchase it. I screenshot the post, checked the date, and cross-referenced it with Tyler's calendar. He'd been at a conference in the Bahamas that same week. The Bahamas were 30 miles from Turks and Caicos. I sent the screenshot to Claudia Pierce with a simple message. She's benefiting from trust-adjacent investments already. Claudia's response came within an hour. This is circumstantial proof of benefit. It establishes pattern and intent. I'm adding it to our evidence file. Vanessa deleted the post 4 hours later. But I'd already saved everything, screenshots with timestamps, comments from friends congratulating her, location tags. Digital breadcrumbs matter. And Vanessa was leaving them everywhere. The trustee called again the following Monday. His voice was different this time, more formal, more careful. "Mrs. Carter, I need to inform you that our internal compliance department is reviewing the recent trust amendment. Several irregularities have been flagged. Specifically, the verbal authorization attributed to you cannot be verified, and Mr. Carter's certification of no conflict of interest appears to be inconsistent with available information." My heart raced. What happens now? The compliance review is mandatory. All distributions related to the amendment are suspended pending investigation. Both trustees will be asked to provide sworn statements and supporting documentation. The timeline is 30 days. And if the investigation finds problems, then the amendment would be voided, and we'd be required to report the findings to the appropriate authorities. Trust fraud is a serious matter, Mrs. Carter. The certification Mr. Carter signed specifically asks about personal relationships with beneficiaries. If he knowingly provided false information, that certification carries both civil and criminal penalties. I closed my eyes absorbing this. Tyler had signed a document swearing he had no conflict of interest with Vanessa. That signature, that lie, could be his undoing. "Thank you for letting me know," I said. "That certification carries penalties." I triggered the next move carefully. The trust document had a protective clause in Section 29 that allowed either trustee to temporarily freeze discretionary distributions if they suspected fiduciary misconduct. The freeze could last up to 90 days while an independent review was conducted. I submitted the request through the trust portal, citing concerns about unauthorized amendments and potential conflicts of interest. The system processed it automatically. Within 24 hours, all discretionary distributions from the trust were frozen. Tyler wouldn't be able to move any money until the freeze lifted. Neither would Vanessa. The $16 million she'd been promised was locked away, untouchable. I watched my husband carefully over the next few days. He checked his phone constantly, frowned at his email, made hushed calls from his office. But he didn't say anything to me. He was trying to fix the problem quietly, trying to figure out what had gone wrong without revealing that anything was wrong. I went about my normal routine. School pickup, grocery shopping, book club. I was the picture of the oblivious wife, focused on domestic concerns while the real world happened around me. Tyler had no idea I'd been the one to freeze everything. What happens when he does? It took 5 days for Tyler to break. He came home early on Friday, agitated, pacing the kitchen while I made dinner. "Did you move anything in the trust?" he asked, trying to sound casual. I looked up from chopping vegetables. "Move anything? What do you mean? Like, did you submit any requests or changes? Freeze anything?" I frowned, playing confused. "No. Why would I? You handle all that stuff." "I don't handle all of it," he snapped. "You're a co-trustee. You have access." His tone was sharp, defensive. I set down the knife and turned to face him fully. "Tyler, what's going on?" "Nothing. It's just there's some kind of hold on the trust distributions. I'm trying to figure out why." "A hold? Is something wrong?" "I don't know." He ran his hands through his hair, frustrated. "The trustee won't give me details. He keeps saying it's under review." I walked over and put my hand on his arm, the concerned wife. "I'm sure it's just a routine thing. These big trusts have all kinds of procedures, right?" He pulled away. "It's not routine. Something's wrong." I watched him storm out of the kitchen, heard his office door slam. He was panicking, realizing that his plan was falling apart, but he couldn't figure out why. He knows something's wrong. That weekend, while Tyler was supposedly golfing, I went to his office and searched his computer. I'd installed monitoring software months ago, back when I first started noticing his late nights and distant behavior. At the time, I told myself I was being paranoid. Now I knew I'd been preparing. I found the emails easily. Tyler wasn't even using encryption. There were hundreds of messages between him and Vanessa, going back 23 months. But the ones from 3 months ago were the most damaging. Tyler had written to a private wealth advisor, someone not connected to our regular financial team. The subject line was, "Future Family Restructuring." The email laid out a plan. Tyler wanted to transition assets to ensure appropriate distribution to all relevant parties. He discussed minimizing complications during anticipated life changes. He referenced protecting certain relationships from public scrutiny. The advisor's response was careful but clear. They discussed trust amendments, strategic timing, and the importance of managing spousal expectations. Tyler had been planning this for months. He'd consulted professionals. He'd mapped out exactly how to move money to Vanessa while keeping me in the dark. The phrase "anticipated life changes" appeared 3 times. He'd been planning to leave me. The trust amendment wasn't just about giving Vanessa money. It was about securing her future before he blew up ours. He planned to replace them. That night, I went through our safe and pulled out our prenuptial agreement. I'd insisted on one before we got married, much to Tyler's annoyance. His father had actually supported me, said it showed good sense. I reread every page, looking for anything I could use. And there, in Section 7, was a clause I'd negotiated personally. I'd been 26 years old and naive about many things, but my own father had taught me to protect myself legally. The clause addressed marital waste and fiduciary abuse. If either spouse used marital assets for extramarital affairs or violated fiduciary duties related to family trusts, that spouse would forfeit certain property rights in divorce proceedings. Specifically, they'd lose claim to any assets acquired during the period of misconduct. Tyler had signed it without reading it carefully. He'd been so confident we'd never divorce, so sure of our love, that he hadn't bothered with the details. I'd been the one who'd insisted on the clause. Me, at 26, somehow knowing that trust and verification were different things. The language was clear. Tyler's affair, his misuse of trust assets, his lies about Vanessa, all of it triggered this clause. If I filed for divorce citing these reasons, Tyler would lose his share of almost everything we'd acquired in the past 2 years. He'd forgotten this clause existed, but I'd been keeping it in reserve for 14 years. He forgot that clause existed. The trustee's formal notice arrived the following Tuesday, sent to both of us via certified mail. Tyler signed for his at work. I signed for mine at home. The letter was clinical and thorough. An investigation had been opened into potential trust irregularities and conflicts of interest. Both trustees were required to provide comprehensive documentation of all communications with the proposed beneficiary, Vanessa Monroe. Both trustees would be deposed under oath. The investigation would take 60 days. All trust amendments submitted in the past 12 months were suspended. All discretionary distributions were frozen. Tyler came home that evening and exploded. I was in the living room reading a book when he stormed in waving the letter. "Did you do this?" he shouted. "Did you trigger this investigation?" I looked up calmly. "Did I do what?" "This." He threw the letter at me. It landed on the coffee table. "The trust investigation. The freeze. Did you file a complaint?" "Tyler, I have no idea what you're talking about. Don't lie to me." His face was red, veins bulging in his neck. "You did something. You had to have done something." "I exercised my rights as co-trustee," I said evenly. "I requested a review because I had concerns. That's my legal responsibility." "Concerns about what?" "About you trying to add your mistress to our children's trust fund." The room went silent. Tyler's face drained of color. He thinks I'm reacting emotionally. The fallout started within days. Tyler's business partners began asking questions. One of them called me directly, asking if everything was okay with the family trust. I told him to speak with Tyler. A major deal Tyler had been negotiating stalled. The investor wanted assurance that Tyler had no personal legal complications before committing funds. Tyler couldn't provide that assurance. I heard through a friend that people were talking. The business community in our city was small, and word traveled fast. Tyler Carter was having trust problems. His judgment was being questioned. Vanessa deleted all her social media accounts. Her Instagram, her LinkedIn, her Facebook, all gone within 48 hours. She was trying to erase the digital trail, but she was too late. I'd already archived everything. Tyler started drinking more. He'd come home from work and pour scotch, sit in his office with the door closed, making phone calls in a hushed, angry voice. I watched our life unravel from the center of the storm, calm and deliberate. I triggered this. I'd set the dominoes in motion, and now they were falling exactly as I'd planned. Sophie asked me one night if Daddy was okay. I told her he was stressed about work. Max said Daddy seemed sad. I hugged him and said everything would be fine. Damage is spreading. Tyler proposed mediation 2 weeks later. He looked humble, defeated. "Elena, this has gotten out of hand," he said. "We need to sit down and work this out. For the kids." "What exactly are we working out?" I asked. "Everything. The trust, the marriage. I made mistakes. But we can handle this privately through mediation without lawyers and courts." I pretended to consider it. Who would mediate? I found someone. A professional who specializes in family financial disputes. Completely neutral. What Tyler didn't understand was that mediation required full financial discovery. Both sides had to disclose everything. He thought he was proposing a quiet way out. He was actually walking into a trap. "Okay," I said. "Let's try mediation." His relief was visible. I nodded, already planning what documents Claudia Pierce would request. He walks into it smiling. The mediation lasted 1 day. That's all it took for everything to collapse. We met in a conference room downtown, neutral territory. The mediator was a calm woman in her 60s who specialized in high-conflict financial cases. Tyler brought his attorney, a friend from law school. I brought Claudia Pierce. The mediator explained the process. Full financial disclosure from both parties. Open discussion of concerns. Negotiated settlement that both sides could accept. Let's start with the trust, the mediator said. Mr. Carter, can you explain the proposed amendment? Tyler launched into his prepared speech. Vanessa was a valued business associate who'd helped him through a difficult time. The trust was large enough to accommodate additional beneficiaries. He'd made an error in judgment but meant no harm. Then Claudia opened her briefcase and started laying out documents. Bank statements showing the Shell LLCs. Credit card records showing gifts and travel. The emails about future family restructuring. Vanessa's deleted social media posts. The forged verbal authorization. The false conflict of interest certification. The conference table filled with evidence. The mediator's expression changed from neutral to concerned to alarmed. Tyler's attorney went pale. I wasn't aware of most of this, he said quietly. The mediator spent 20 minutes reviewing everything. Finally, she looked up. Mr. Carter, this isn't a mediation matter anymore. This is potential criminal fraud. She ended the session immediately. This is no longer a divorce, it's exposure. Claudia Pierce moved fast. Within 48 hours, she filed an emergency petition in family court seeking a protective order freezing all assets affecting the children. The petition was detailed and damning. It outlined Tyler's fraud, his secret relationship, his misuse of trust authority, his attempts to divert $16 million to his mistress. It requested immediate suspension of his trustee powers and appointment of an independent trustee. The hearing was scheduled for the following week. Tyler was served with papers at his office. According to Claudia's investigator, he'd locked himself in his office for 2 hours afterward. I used that time to move the kids to my mother's house. I told them we were having work done on the house, which wasn't entirely a lie. I was having work done on my marriage, demolishing it down to the foundation. The hearing took 90 minutes. The judge, a woman in her 50s with no patience for financial games, reviewed our evidence. She asked Tyler's attorney 3 direct questions. His attorney stumbled through inadequate answers. The judge ruled from the bench. Tyler was immediately removed as trustee. All his access to the trust was revoked. An independent trustee would be appointed within 30 days. Any further contact with the trust required court approval. Tyler lost all control in a single morning. He's officially locked out. Vanessa found out 3 days later that she'd been removed from everything. The trust amendment was voided. Her name was stripped from all documents. The $16 million she'd been promised vanished. She called Tyler's cell phone 14 times in one afternoon. I know because his phone bill came to our house and I saw the records. Then she confronted him publicly. She showed up at his office building, caused a scene in the lobby. Security had to escort her out. People filmed it on their phones. By evening, it was on local social media groups. You promised me, she screamed, according to witnesses. You said it was guaranteed. Tyler's professional reputation, already damaged, shattered completely. His business partners called an emergency meeting. I heard through the network that they were considering removing him from leadership. His largest client put their contract on hold, citing concerns about judgment and stability. Tyler moved out of our house that weekend. He rented a furnished apartment across town. He took his clothes, his computer, nothing else. I watched him load boxes into his car. He looked older, defeated. Nothing like the confident man who'd hummed in the mirror 6 weeks ago. Vanessa stopped calling after that. She'd lost her golden ticket. And Tyler had lost his partner in crime. He's losing allies fast. Tyler's attorney called Tuesday with a settlement proposal. Tyler was offering everything. Full custody, the house, 70% of marital assets, permanent removal from trust responsibilities. He just wants this to end quietly, the attorney said. No court proceedings, no public record. He's willing to be generous for your discretion. The offer was massive, far more than a standard divorce. No, I said. Mrs. Carter, this is very generous. I don't want a settlement. I want a precedent. I want every man who thinks he can steal from his children to know what happens when he tries. But your children, my children need to know their mother protected them. Tell Mr. Carter we'll see him in court. I called Claudia Pierce. They offered a settlement. What did you say? No. She laughed. Good. The district attorney just opened a criminal investigation. She's going for the win. The court ruling came down 6 weeks later. Judge Anderson's decision was thorough. 42 pages of legal analysis and factual findings. Tyler had committed fiduciary abuse. He'd violated his duties as trustee, prioritized personal benefit over beneficiary welfare, provided false certifications, and attempted to defraud the trust of $16 million. The judge removed him permanently as trustee. She imposed financial sanctions of $600,000, the approximate amount he'd funneled through the shell LLCs. She ordered him to pay all legal fees related to the trust proceedings. Most devastatingly, she referred the case to the State Bar Association for ethics review and to the district attorney for criminal prosecution. The ruling was public record. Within hours, it was picked up by the local business journal. Prominent executive removed from family trust for fraud. Tyler's business collapsed that same day. His partners forced him out. His clients terminated their contracts. His professional licenses were suspended pending the ethics investigation. I read the news coverage from my living room, Sophie and Max playing in the next room, unaware of the earthquake that had just destroyed their father's life. His reputation collapsed in a single morning. Downfall begins. The trust was restructured within 30 days. An independent board was appointed, 3 financial professionals with no connection to either Tyler or me. I was named guardian advisor, giving me oversight of decisions affecting Sophie and Max. The structure was better than before. The board managed the investments professionally, provided quarterly reports, and established education funds and healthcare trusts for when the kids turned 25. Sophie and Max's future was secured beyond Tyler's reach. Tyler's business partners publicly distanced themselves, issuing a statement about maintaining the highest ethical standards. Vanessa disappeared. I heard she'd moved to another state trying to rebuild under a different name. I started working again, doing financial consulting for other women going through divorces. I understood the games men played with money. I could help. My rise was quiet but real. She's not done yet. Months later, I sat on our back patio watching Sophie and Max play in the yard. They were laughing, racing each other, completely absorbed in being children. The property was officially theirs now, held in trust until they turned 18. Tyler couldn't touch it. Nobody could. It was protected, locked down, secured by legal structures that would outlast all of us. Tyler was fighting multiple lawsuits, professional sanctions, a criminal investigation that would probably end in plea deal. His attorney kept calling, asking if I'd reconsider settlement, if I'd agree to reduce charges. I kept saying no. Not out of cruelty but out of principle. What Tyler had done wasn't just betrayal. It was a violation of the most basic trust, the promise to protect your children above all else. Vanessa was gone, the affair was over. The fantasy he'd built had evaporated the moment the money disappeared. I went inside and pulled out the estate binder, the one I'd maintained for 14 years. I added the final court order, the trust restructuring documents, the custody agreement. Then I wrote resolved on the label and put it on the shelf. I wasn't vengeful. I wasn't bitter. I was something better than that. I was victorious on my own terms, having protected what mattered most. And I walked away from the ruins of my marriage knowing I'd won the only battle that truly counted, the one for my children's future.